Hey, what's up guys? How are you all doing? My name is Rob of Rule of Two Review, and welcome back to today's Star Wars video. So super fast before we get into the topic of today's Star Wars video, I wanted to do one quick piece of housekeeping and kind of just lay out to you guys what I'm going to do with the Star Wars video format going forward. I have decided to create a quote-unquote series that is called Star Wars Sundays, and the name is pretty self-explanatory. Star Wars videos are going to become a Sunday-only thing, barring any huge announcements or major pieces of news that I maybe want to cover right as they're breaking. You know, a recent example would be when suddenly Colin Trevorrow was let go from Episode 9, and then 3 or 4 days later, suddenly J.J. Abrams took over. And since the Star Wars video kind of thing is something that's pretty new to Rule of Two Review, I've only recently started doing it, and they're very sporadic because I'm not planning on changing the core of what Rule of Two Review is, which is gaming and Nintendo-focused content. I figured that I should at least do the Star Wars stuff on a regular sort of schedule. And what it won't be is every single Sunday. Sundays can be any video that I feel like making at any given time, but again, the standard format will be if there's a Star Wars video I want to make every few weeks, I will release them only on Sundays. So with that piece of news out of the way, we can get into the goods of what today's Star Wars topic is going to be about, and this is something that I have been thinking for a long time, pretty much since conversations around The Force Awakens had started in the aftermath of the film releasing. And it's something that, honestly, I think needs to be discussed, and a lot of people have brought up the opposing side, and the more and more I heard people start to talk about this with the reveal of anthology films and everything that they're doing with the future films that we know to expect right now, I started to realize I feel like some people aren't giving enough credence to the other angle to look at this from, and it's something I care about and am passionate about, and I just need to discuss it. So what I want to talk about is my opinion on the idea of the Star Wars universe being too small, or the fact that some people, a lot of people, in fact, I'll even go far as to say most people feel like the Star Wars universe should only get bigger. And what this truly means when people have discussed it is now that we live in a time where Lucasfilm will be making more Star Wars films outside of just the episodic films. We've already had one of those. We know to expect Han Solo early next year. And then, of course, in 2020, we're going to be getting another anthology sort of film, a Star Wars story film that we all expect to be Obi-Wan, even though it's not been truly completely confirmed. We all kind of understand that Obi-Wan is probably what that film is going to be. And with that happening and new stories being told on film, you know, traditionally we've had many additional stories and expanded stories told in novel form and comic form and video game form, and it's been great. But now that we're in an era where we're going to see the stuff on film, everyone says, well, don't just tell a story that has to have Darth Vader, and don't just shoehorn Obi-Wan into this, and you know, don't only tell the story of Han Solo, a character we already know. We want to see the universe get bigger, and we want new characters and new things at all times. And, you know, don't feel like you need to squeeze just all the Skywalker only sort of story and legacy into the films that you're putting on screen outside of the episodic films, let's say. And don't be afraid to just make the universe bigger. And sometimes we want all new stories focused on all new characters and that sort of thing. Now, please, you guys, listen to me before I get into the real sort of defense on my perspective here. It's very important that you take note of what I'm about to say right now. And that is that at the end of the day, absolutely is that whole thing mostly a good thing. And of course, by that, I mean the idea of the bigger universe and new characters and new stories focused on these new characters. I absolutely 100% do think that there are a lot of good things there, and I do love that, and it is very true that the Star Wars universe is massive. That is exactly what was in George Lucas's head when he created the story and the characters, and that's what we've only ever seen with every new film ever since A New Hope in '77. Every new film has gotten bigger and bigger, and we've seen newer set pieces and more characters and newer planets and locations, and it's been fantastic. And that is one of the best parts about Star Wars, and in no way, shape, or form do I want to actually smother or strangle or prevent future creativity, especially in the post-Lucas era where now different filmmakers are getting to make Star Wars films. I'm really not ultimately trying to strangle that because, I mean, that's part of the creative process and it is part of creativity. And like I've already alluded to, I absolutely acknowledge how huge the universe is, and there is a lot of potential for a lot of great new stuff. Absolutely. And again, we've seen it Previously, we've seen it mostly in that expanded material, like the books and the video games and whatnot. We've now seen one anthology film, Rogue One, which, although I don't love it and it's fairly forgettable in the Star Wars realm, it is ultimately a very good movie that I super do enjoy, and I think that there's some great stuff within it. And so we've already seen evidence of this working, and yes, you can introduce new characters and new stories and make everything work. But to be fair, on the Rogue One side, we do have to acknowledge that it was still centered around nothing but important events and characters from the films. Obviously, Darth Vader is a huge part played in that film and something that a lot of people were attached to, and Lucasfilm was smart, in my opinion, to include Darth Vader. We also had Mon Mothma and Bail Organa. You know, shout-outs to other characters within. I mean, it's something where, yes, they gave us new characters in a new story, but also it's really just new characters within the same story and around other characters that we already know. So my whole perspective on this thing, now that you guys have heard that, and I hope you took note of that I don't ultimately think that every attempt to make the universe bigger and introduce new characters is a bad thing. Absolutely not. What I did want to get across in this video is that I'm somebody who appreciates the Skywalker roots and the sort of smaller lens that we've looked at this huge Star Wars universe through up until now. The way Star Wars films were traditionally told in the original 6 films was very much focused on, I can't say a smaller story because obviously the story was very big and it got bigger and bigger, especially when the prequel trilogy happened, but it was still filtered through the idea of a small group of people, obviously focused around one family for the most part, the Skywalker family, and the legacy of that name as it carried from one to 2 others, and so on and so forth. And that's something that I think is really great. I think it's one of the most unique and coolest things about Star Wars when you really think about it, because especially nowadays, we have so many examples in all sorts of different forms of media, whether it is film or video games or comic books or what have you, where we have huge universes and we have a lot of lore and canon and 100 different characters and 100 different groups of characters doing 100 different things, and there's all sorts of continuity, and, you know, anything goes and anything is possible, and that's really great. And Star Wars technically does exist within that same universe. It's a whole galaxy, it's a whole political system, it's a whole government, it's a whole policing system, it's a whole organization of crime and underlords and all these different things, and of course the magical mysticism and the religion that is known as the Force and the Jedi and the stories that we've seen. And it's massive. There's nothing but potential for all these huge things. But what's been great is, again, in those original 6 films, is we've been looking at it through the lens of a small group and one family and one name. And I think that people are maybe losing sight of the fact that that's really what Star Wars was built around. And I understand, again, I understand you guys, the idea of, okay, well, that's what it was, but now it's changing, and now different people are involved with the films and the company, and they are making, you know, spin-off and anthology films. So what a great example to just keep doing new things, and just do that. But I feel like what happens, even though the occasional attempt to bring in characters and stories focused entirely on new characters and new eras and do things that we haven't seen focused on the Skywalker saga, is certainly okay and welcome in sporadic doses, I think that people may be forgetting or letting go of the true root of Star Wars. And so my real feeling here, and ultimate defense of my concept, is that I actually like the fact that the Star Wars galaxy and universe is huge, and we understand it, that there's so many things going on with the politics and the locations and all this stuff, but the story has been told through the Skywalker name and the Skywalker saga and people and characters that surround these Skywalkers that we've come to know and the ones that we're getting to know currently, ones that we're getting to know, whatever's happening there, of course. You know, it's really, really interesting to me, and I think it's one of the greatest things that Lucas ever decided to do when he created this story, and he's even traditionally said it so many times. The Star Wars story, as told, as created, the genesis within the human brain that gifted Star Wars to us, tells us the motivation and original idea was it's told through this family, and it's told as the rise and fall of one man, Anakin Skywalker, Darth Vader. Of course, we learned the chosen one is Anakin, but is it also Luke? I've touched on that so many times. And so the father and son sort of mentality, and father and son and daughter mentality, I should say, is really what we've been seeing the Star Wars universe through. That's how we've understood the galaxy as it surrounds these characters. And I love that. I think that that's brilliant. And I know that people are like, oh, but you know, you shouldn't tell a story that way, or we shouldn't be so restricted to just the Skywalkers and just this story that we've gotten to know, at least outside in the spin-off films. And again, in sporadic doses, I do agree. But do I feel like we need to get so many stories that get farther and farther away from this main central thread that we have been following since 1977, a year that even predates me, but still we've been following it so long? And it's like, I'm not going to be mad that that's going to continue to happen, and I absolutely understand why people want that, and I totally support people's desire for it, and honestly, you guys are going to get your wish. That is the plan, and I understand why, but I'm someone who's like, I don't really need that. I mean, I think that we need to stop and think about how cool it is to have a universe as huge as the Star Wars universe, but only see it through this group of people, and as their stories and their offspring continue to go and sort of do that. It makes me think, the example I've thought of in my head is, well, imagine if somebody who we've never heard of tomorrow, you know, Joe Schmo or Mary Smith or whatever tomorrow, announces, hey, I have this great new story that I'm going to start telling in book form or movie form or television form or whatever. And it's this huge, amazing, interconnected world, and it's got all these different things on it. But I just want always the focus of this amazing universe and world that I'm creating to be through, you know, these two characters and a couple of people who get to know them, and no matter how big and epic in scope everything starts to become, we're always only experiencing what this made-up world is through these couple of characters. And I feel like if that was just told to us as a new story and a new idea that was coming at us tomorrow from some other person, people would just accept it for what it is, and maybe it looks exciting, maybe it doesn't, but it's like, okay, that's what that is. That story is that. Huge world, lens of a couple of people, and that's how that story will be told. And I think that that would be great, and most people would probably accept it and not start to demand, make your stories bigger, make stories about different people and different characters, and start to branch out from just the two characters you started your whole vision on. I mean, just do more. And it's like, well, we're kind of retroactively trying to apply that mentality to what Star Wars has always been. And I really think it's one of the things that I've always secretly loved about Star Wars without realizing it until this talk started to happen, where some people are like, oh, don't make an Obi-Wan movie because it's just another character we already know and it's blah, 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 blah. Do a new character. Pick this era and do this with new people. Do this era and do this with new people. You know, specifically on film we're talking. Again, in the comics and novels and stuff, I eat that stuff up. I've always ate it up. I love all the previous expanded material stuff, and I'm reading all the new canon right now as well. So that stuff is great, but on film, people are so demanding of this. And I'm like, you know, I just have learned that I think Star Wars was meant to be told through the Skywalker lens. That's just what it was envisioned as. And, you know, if Lucas hadn't been so vocal about that in the past, maybe I wouldn't be so attached to the idea. But it's like, I've heard him say that. I've heard the quotes and heard the creator talk about the intent and the vision when it was first introduced into his brain, and then became a film, and then having seen all of the movies up until then and loved and lived them for decades on decades, it's like, well, it's always felt that way too. Like, he's delivered on that vision through the 6 films that he made. And so that has just what's kept me in love with Star Wars. It's like, I've been a Star Wars fan through these 6 films, so why wouldn't I love what the creator has told me he intended to do with what he did? You know what I'm saying? Like, why would I all of a sudden be like, it's too small of a story, just the Skywalkers, that's dumb. Well, we've always only ever known it that way, and he's always only ever told it to us that way, so it just seems weird to, again, go back and retroactively say, no, it's supposed to be bigger with new things always. Don't keep doing the same characters and same things. And so in wrapping this up, I know this is probably a strange topic and a strange way to go about talking about this topic, but it's just something that I care about, you know, and again, I'll remind you, hopefully you make it this far into the video, I will remind you that at the end of the day, I don't hate or abhor the idea of new characters and new stories and new films. I absolutely don't, because I believe they could be great. But when I see a new character or a new story or a new movie or whatever, it's those moments where we see somebody who we already know, or we get those Easter eggs to thing that we've already seen, or we have actors come back to reprise their roles, or they're circling around events that we know from the films already. That's the most exciting stuff. Just a new character about 3 people who I've never heard of, you know, 28 years before the Phantom Menace or whatever, that's completely random and has nothing to do with anything, like, and that's the kind of stuff people are really asking for. I don't know. I mean, maybe I'm wrong here and you guys can yell at me, but I'm not super dying to get that story. I don't need a story in the Star Wars universe about people I don't care about. But the movie could still be great if that's the story being told, and so many of these movies could be great. And again, it doesn't make me mad, and I don't hate the idea. I just feel like it might even be wasted effort. I just like the idea of Star Wars staying within the realm of the sacred thing it had always been intended to be by the creator. And I like the fact that it's about the Skywalkers, it's about this person and this person and this person. They're related, their offspring, the things that happen, the huge political shifts and moves that happen around these characters, and like how they are impacting the destiny of themselves, their own family, and the galaxy around them. That's the coolest thing. Think about it. That is the true lens that we have viewed Star Wars through. And I know I've used that phrase of viewing it through this lens a few times, many times in this video even, but it's really the truest and most appropriate way, I think, to describe the idea that I'm getting at here. And I don't know. I mean, this is probably the best place to sort of wrap this conversation up. It's really interesting to me. And if we never got anthology movies and only ever got, you know, 6, 9, 12 Skywalker-centric episodic films forever and ever, that's great. That's Star Wars to me. That is the Star Wars that the creator always intended, and that I have felt radiating from the screen in the previous 6 movies he made before Episode 7 came out. And I think that that's a wonderful thing. And you know, we don't have to make it like every other story. Star Wars can be the unique thing that it always has been up until we're trying to change all this and make all these random stories about random people at random times and whatever. It's always been that. So, I don't know. That's what I feel about this. You guys are more than welcome to yell at me and tell me how wrong I am in the comments below. Reminder, all of you guys who disagree with me and just love all this idea of nothing but new stories and new characters and forget the Skywalkers, let's get away from them, you're going to get your wish. That is currently, I think, Lucasfilm's plan. After the Obi-Wan movie comes out and they take a break for a couple of years, they're going to come back and start giving us all these weird, wishy-washy, random stories that have nothing to do about anything but happen to be a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, and you guys are going to get it, and it's going to be interesting, and I will keep an open mind and be there day one to see them all, and maybe I get proven wrong. But for now, I like the Skywalkers. I like Lucas's vision. That's the only lens I truly need the huge Star Wars galaxy through. So what do you guys think? Like I said, absolutely yell at me and tell me I'm wrong in the comments below, but hopefully you enjoyed this Star Wars Sunday conversation. And, you know, thanks for tuning in. Look forward to more Star Wars videos on Sundays in the future. This is Rob of Rule of Two Review, and I will catch you guys next time on another video.